Yeah.
I'm Erin Tonkin. I'm a producer, engineer, and mixer. I am normally based in Brooklyn, New York, where I live. However, I've been in Dallas, Texas since late March,
Mm.
and I'm still here at my parents' house with a little studio setup that I'm not currently in.
Mm. Basically, we are like, since we are interviewing you about you being a producer and so on, like, what's your main focus on how what you work with? Are you producer or mixing engineer, mastering engineer? What would you consider yourself to be at
I
this
consider
moment?
myself equally a producer, an engineer, and a mixer. I don't master. That's the one thing I don't do. But
Mm.
mainly those three: producing, engineering, and mixing. Lately, this year, it's been mostly mixing,
Yeah,
which I love to do. So I consider equally those three things.
yeah. And what was it like that got you into the field of work that you're doing nowadays?
I mean, I think I always wanted to do something with music. I loved music growing up, and like so many records like changed my life and made me like realize who I was as a young kid and a teenager. And it was such an important part of my life. And I knew I wanted to do something with music and started out, playing a lot of instruments growing up and loved doing that. But didn't love practicing, found it hard as like a girl to find like bands to play with growing up. Things are like different now, luckily, but felt intimidated a lot by I think the scene and realized that I really loved sort of playing with the sounds, coming out of my guitar. I was kind of more interested in doing that than I was in like writing songs or practicing the guitar. I was more interested in like exploring the different sounds I could create, and then come to find out there's kind of a whole job for that. So I learned about, what a producer is and what an engineer is. And in high school, went to a high school that actually had a small recording studio in it and started learning there. And that was, my first sort of introduction and interest in production and engineering.
Yeah. Uh, like, did you have any favorite like pedals or anything like that at the time, or do you have any like with the guitar sounds? Like, what? How did you have a specific thing that like draw you into it, like a detail?
I always loved
Yeah.
Eventide products. I still do to this day, and like remember having like probably a space echo or reverb pedal and just initially just playing around with that in itself and just really interested in manipulating sound and interested in, when I would listen to records, I was so curious about how they made things sound the way that they did and why different records sounded so different than each other, and really, became just more interested in that than playing the music myself or wanting to be, on stage performing.
Mm.
um, so yeah, that was the early sort of it was really a curiosity
Yeah.
at that point with limited, resources
Mm.
at the time.
Yeah, and then you like after that you also discovered like the study forms around the
Mm-hmm.
subject. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, after from that point, I started working like at a radio station and learning a little bit about that. And then when I went to college, initially I went to college in Boston and worked at the radio station in there and started producing like promos and stuff for the station. I was an on-air DJ, but started taking classes in audio production. However, that wasn't my major at that school, and I ended up leaving Boston after about a year and a half, 2 years, and moving back to San Diego, where I grew up. And that's when I started working in recording studios, and really learning, studios in San Diego, such as like Signature Sound Studios and Studio West were the two studios there that I really learned so much at, and started engineering and hands on. And then from there ended up, decided this is what I want to do with my life, and applied to the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music at New York University, and got in and moved there, and really learned so much. And at the same time, that's when I started working for Tony Visconti, and became a professional engineer and mixer and then producer.
Yeah.
So that was sort of my trajectory, was really like the standard, like a lot of old school ways, like you start in college radio, and then work at studios and work your way up to doing your own projects. And I really
Mm.
followed that trajectory.
Yeah, was there like how many years like were you working with Tony, or I presume you're still working with Tony?
Not full
No,
time. I worked with
no.
Tony full time for about 5 years,
Yeah,
and yeah, it was amazing. And then wanted more time to do more projects on my own, and started freelancing and helping Tony out here and there. But it was a solid 5 years that I was working with him all
yeah,
the time while I was in school as well.
yeah. That's interesting. So it was 5 years, and now you're doing your solo, like your own company, sort of based.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Just yes, exactly. I
yeah,
I I'm a free agent.
yeah. That's awesome. So what would you like consider is the best thing about your job, like in general, like in.
The
Mm,
best thing about my job is probably, getting to work with so many cool, interesting people and helping people to, it's like a song is such a vulnerable expression of oneself, and being trusted to bring that song to its full potential. Sometimes hearing it for as a first person outside of maybe the artist to hear a song, is such like a sacred sort of relationship and bond. And I love being able to be a part of that and help to create the sound that they were dreaming of in their head, or maybe something that they never even dreamed it could sound like. That's the coolest part for me, is like when an artist is like feels I we really realized the intention of the song.
mm,
It's such a gift to be able to do that with people.
yeah. Are you working with something like currently? That's or is it like you shouldn't talk
Yeah,
about
I mean,
it?
mixing right now, I'm
Yeah.
really just mixing at the moment due to, being safe in this
Mm,
pandemic. And yeah, it's a variation. Some artists will come to me and know exactly what they want, and some artists come to me and they're like, I have no idea what direction this needs to go in. Can you help me figure that out? So it's really a,
mm,
a broad range right now. But
mm,
it's exciting to have that variation. Sometimes I get to be very technical about things, and when someone's like, I love the way it sounds, just make this sound like more professional, then I'm like, all right, like let's go through and comb through everything and make sure this is like an engineering feat that they didn't even know it could sound better than it already and then sometimes it's real creative task at hand, is really figuring out what the arrangement of the song calls for and how I can carve and sculpt that into a really beautiful mix that
mm,
that and also, so much of that is communication with the artist, especially when I can't be in the same room as them. It's
mm,
them communicating their ideas to me, and me translating that into sort of what I need to do,
mm.
in Pro Tools,
Yeah.
essentially.
But do you have like online meetings with your artists, or how do you like communicate with them? So, like,
Like,
yeah.
sure. I've been doing so. I know a lot of people have been
Mm,
doing like streaming the mix and working that way.
mm,
I've been doing just like um you know phone chat
mm,
beforehand, emails back and forth, and then I dive in, and then we just send back and forth. I finish a mix
mm,
pass, they give me notes, we discuss, I make edits, and then move forward from that point. Which is I do enjoy working that way. I'm really big on when I'm mixing, like I don't want anyone in the room for the first mix pass. Like let me do all the dirty work. Let me wrap my head around it, have my artistic process with it, and then you can come in and give me your opinions. But some people have someone in the room with them the whole time that they're mixing, and I'm very much like I need my time, give me one
mm.
pass and then we'll go from there. So this is a nice way to work. I keeps things um succinct in a way, and I think it's like an efficient way to work, and you can still be totally creative and collaborative,
Yeah.
just by chatting on the phone and about it.
So what would you like consider is the like biggest challenges in the line of work that you do, uh, as the contrary to the positive things? Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, some of the challenges are also the best things about it. You know, like some of the things I just listed as the best things are also some of the greatest challenges, such as communication. You know, is I pride myself on being a great communicator, and I think that that really helps in my line of work. But that can be very challenging because you have artists coming from all different backgrounds, all different levels of experience working with a professional engineer. Some people are artists that have been around a long time and are used to it. Some people have never worked with another person before in this regard. So it's meeting people where they're at and being able to translate what they want onto the page, so to speak. That can be, someone might say they want it to sound like, you know, they want their drums to sound like, I don't know, Beatles drums. I mean, just to throw the most obvious example out there, it's like, well, which album, what about the drums? They might just be talking about the snare sound. They might not want it to sound exactly that way. And my job is to be able to figure that out and figure out exactly what they mean by that, because I can't expect everyone to have such a highly trained ear that I have. I think everyone is brilliant at their own line of work. And some artists are also great engineers, but a lot of artists don't have an engineering background. So they might say, this sounds overly, compressed, or I want this type of reverb, or, and it might not actually be the case. It might be something else, but it's my job to figure that out. Also help empower them by educating them about, what I did. And so that can be a huge challenge. And then another challenge is, again, talking about what cool, amazing people I get to work with. Artists are also very sensitive people, and it's a very, you're working with their most intimate pieces of work. So sometimes, you might take something in a different direction than they wanted it to be in, and it can be, you have to, develop a thick skin, because someone might say, I don't like what you did, and it's like, oh God, that takes a while to get over, or someone sending you a lot of notes on a mix master just not liking the direction, and that is par for the course, because this is a very subjective, there's objective things that you can do, engineering wise, to make things sound, there's general rules, but even those can be broken. So this is all subjective. It's art. So sometimes you're on two different ideas in your head, and being able to take that, can be challenging. Not so much anymore. I've learned, and I've gotten better at translating and communicating. I think that's one of the hardest skills to learn in this industry. But those are two major challenges.
Yeah. Could we know a lot about it. I think many people will like feel you on this one. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I sort of have a question to you, like if you could tell us a little bit about a moment in your career that sort of like changed things around for you, like for the better. If you have an example of such a situation.
I mean, I think definitely, like, working with Tony Visconti and working with David Bowie was a real, complete life changer and game changer for me. Being able to see, being able to work with people of that caliber, being able to work with heroes of mine, and also being able to see the relationship between an artist and a producer that had worked together for, 30, 40 years, and made some of the, greatest records of all time, and see how that dynamic works was just so special for me. I mean, not only to be able to work with them, but to observe their working relationship and artistic relationship was really transformative for me.
Was there like anything in that, like in the dynamic, that you still think about, that like sort of um, made you like think in a different way, like an example of a work method or something that they used that you like?
Sure. I think it was more so than a specific, like, technical method. it was the respect for each other and for each other's expertise was really really cool to see how Tony obviously respected Bowie for being a profound artist and songwriter and producer as well, and all his skills, and then how Bowie always trusted the people that he chose to work with and allowed them to do their job, whether it be, the producer, myself engineering, Kevin engineering, or, the different musicians we worked with. And it was cool to see. I think a lot of times when people are maybe newer or starting out or making their first couple records, they want to assert themselves as everything they say is always right, and their way always goes. And to see real, true collaboration with people that are the absolute game, like greatest of all time level, and see how they take in other people's ideas and consider that and respect each other was very very important, more so than all the amazing, tricks and technical things and I mean, just, watching that all work and having to work at that level, was obviously huge for my actual skill set. But, again, learning that dynamic was really helpful for me to see and to practice in my own career.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting, like how much you have to also like every different artist or producer or person that you work with, you need to be, how do you feel about that, like improvisational almost around it, like to be able to like catch their vibe and you know.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to be deeply empathetic and deeply aware of people's like subtle social cues, and so you have to almost be like a mind reader, and it's funny because I think that there's this um preconceived notion about, people working in studios, typically like an engineer, that they are, might be socially awkward or not very, personable, something like that. You have to be, that's not going to get you very far if you are that way, if you're not good at communicating with people, because it's so much of anticipating people's needs and next moves
Mm.
and their work and learning their process really really quickly so that you can be ready when they're ready to go. So yeah, definitely.
Mm. That's cool. Basically, we already went through this question earlier, but in regards to the improvisational like skill needed and the mind
Hmm.
reading, of course it's a hazard during COVID-19, like, and
Hmm.
we talked about you communicating a lot by like through the internet, through chatting, through, yeah, such things. How has it been, like the accessibility in general, like reaching people at this moment,
Hmm.
uh, compared to how it has been before this pandemic?
I think in terms of reaching people, it's probably easier because everyone's, mostly sitting around at home most of the time. So, but it's taking different like communication skill, just learning how to make things more concise when you're talking, I think, because you don't have you're not in a room with someone chit chatting and really learning someone's personality. I mean, I've been working with a lot of people, now that I've never met before. And, I always do that because I do a lot of mixing and get stuff from all over the world to mix, but that's the majority of what it's been right now. So, there is a lot that you understand about people's music and their whole vibe when you're like in a room talking to them, and doing that just like over the phone or over video or something like that is like, it's, you got to learn a little bit quicker.
Mm.
But I kind of used to it, in the same time, because again, I have worked with people remotely before, and it's kind of the world we live in, and I think it's so cool that we can do that nowadays.
Mm.
So I don't mind it terribly. I miss being in a studio recording with people and all that. But this is nice too, to be able to. I think it's opening people's minds up to, like, you can work with anyone in the world,
Mm.
because it can be done, sort of remotely at times.
Yeah. So probably a lot of people are sending you material that they have recorded themselves as well at this moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I am getting a lot more home recorded stuff,
Yeah.
uh, which is that's been interesting too, because I initially think, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a mess, like I'm like, this is going to obviously sound like garbage, and I'm going to have, just that's because that's what we would assume, but I'm forcing myself to listen and be like, well, does this really sound like garbage? Is there something cool about it that I might want to, instead of going in and trying to, notch out every EQ and figure everything out and make it sound like something completely different, there might be some inherent really cool quality about it. I was, recently mixing for an artist called Casey Satterfield, and she recorded a lot of the stuff on her own in her home, and used like kitchen items for one of the songs, and it sounds really cool, and I was like, well, this is great, and isn't as much of a engineering challenge as I thought it would be, and it has such a cool vibe to it. And that's, I think a lot of the music people are writing now have that feel of, this is from home, this is in isolation, and to be able to like honor that, and honor that in the arrangement, is cool, so it hasn't been, there's been some things like some artists are sending me, their stems and not having another engineer prepare them, and it's just like a nightmare to open up, but we work with it, and I'm happy to be working, so it's
Yeah.
no huge deal.
Yeah, that sounds like a good way to handle the situation, and also like it's so interesting, like how you would presume like that things sound better just because they're in the studio, or like all these perceived things that we have, expectations on things, but
Yeah, it's
it's
like, as like it's like something that Tony always taught to me, which seems obvious, but it's an important reminder, in days where we are looking at screens a lot while we're making music. And he always said, use your ears, just a reminder to always use your ears first, not your eyes, not what you assume something to be like. What does it sound like? That's what we're dealing with.
mm, yeah. Just a question that we would like to ask all of our role models. It's basically like if you do have any thoughts on how we can reach more equity or equality in the music business. Have if you have any thoughts around that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it has to be so
Mm.
um so system, like the whole system needs to change and needs to abide by that, like, of course, I mean, we always talk about, gender, but it's like so much race too, especially like in America, and living in America, and the whole American music was built off of essentially like stealing black people's ideas and style, and making money off of that as a white person, and to me, the fact that any sort of music related company, organization, anything exists without black people in roles of leadership is like very disturbing and challenging to me, because again, and I'm not sure about in other countries, but in America, our American music is black music, and so I think that labels need to have, people of color, black people specifically, women, people of different gender expressions, trans people, and just diversity in leadership roles, and that should trickle down to, you know, um, uh, distribution companies, record labels, studios, engineering, producers, like hire people that are different than you, because all that's going to do is help because music listeners look like anything, and come from all different places, and it's the right thing to do. It's also the smart thing to do. So, I think anytime someone can work with someone that is different from them and has different experiences, um, is like would be such a gift, and I love working with people that are different than me, and yeah, so I think, accessibility of all types needs to be a focus,
Mm.
worldwide in the industry. But, I can only really specifically speak to America because it's where I've lived my whole life.
Yeah. it's an interesting perspective for us as well, since a big part of the industry is based in America as well. So,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
and it affects us as well here. And
Absolutely.
we Swedish culture has always been, not always, but since the 50s or something like that, has always been working like, yeah, the television shows, programs, American programs a lot, and so on. So we,
Mhm.
yeah, for us, American culture is very like a sisterly almost connection.
Sure.
Yeah. Uh,
Absolutely.
mm,
Yeah, and I
mm,
just think it all needs to change. I just
mm,
think it's like absolutely
mm,
ridiculous, and I think like everyone's complicit in it too. I know I've, made mistakes in the past and always try to, be better every day and be more inclusive and try to reach more people and help more people when I can and support, different types of artists and different types of people as
mm,
well and, lift everyone up.
mm.
Just think it's like super important.
It's a struggle. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I get
yeah.
it. Um, yeah. So, do you have any thoughts on, like, to anyone who's like in the beginning of trying to achieve a career as a future music producer, like what's important for a person like that?
Yeah, I think like the most important thing to do, like the most important thing is like collaborating with other people and like finding like a scene, like a music scene wherever you are, and meeting and working with other people, bouncing off ideas, like is the number one thing. Because you can only do so much sitting by yourself, you know, on your computer watching YouTube instructional videos on how to do X, Y, and Z. I think it's music is all about collaboration. And, I don't think you necessarily have to have the most expensive gear or the most expensive instruments or have access to the most expensive, fanciest recording studios. You can do a lot with not much money or access nowadays, but you do need a community of people to work with. And even like if getting out and around is hard, or even right now, it's like find people on the internet. Like I wish I had, that was more popular when I was a kid. Like you can meet people over the world and collaborate musically with them. So that is like the number one thing for me is yeah, building those skill sets you can only get with working with other people. And there's a lot of information online and a lot you can learn. But there's also like conflicting information, so it's like, uh, you know, study and learn, but put it into practice. You can really hear what works and feel what works great with other people.
So from here, like, now you're talking about like a work process basically. Are you using any like methods or techniques yourself, or have you like developed something, like an own way of working?
For me, I have a very like in terms of my workflow, I have a method that I follow and an organization to my work that really helps me because there's so many decisions you have to make when you're engineering or producing or mixing in like split seconds, especially if you're in the room with with the artist, um, that you want to eliminate any like try to reduce any room for error to happen. So I have a very like an order in which I do things, everything from setting up my session to the order in which I place the instruments, whether I'm recording or mixing or producing. Like everything always goes in the same order. And an order in which I do things so that I can be creative, because you have to be creative and you have to be highly, highly technical and highly skilled in that area. And you have to deal with these personalities, and
Mm.
emotions of artists. And so having a really like, regimented way and order of doing things, I think is really important. And I have what works for me. I think it's the right way to do things, but that's because it's how it works best for me. So like organization, and having that, I think is really, really helpful.
So basically about also like inspiration. What is your like main inspiration or role models or people like regarding this work?
I think I get inspired by I think when you like work in music or do it for a long time, or do it if you're like any sort of an engineer where you're so like you have to get so hyper focused on every little element of a song. Sometimes you can forget like how powerful music can be for people. So like and you can get like, jaded or something like, oh, this is my work. And I've been like that at times, but seeing like the power that music has over everyone is like really inspiring to me, and like remembering that, and remembering like what it can do for people,
Hmm.
back to like why I fell in love with music and wanted to work with it in the first place is like really, that's really my like biggest source of inspiration, more so than any like one person, is like, the effect it has on people, like, watching like children, and how excited they can get over cool sounds. Like I like introduced my 6-year-old nephew to the Talking Heads, and he's like obsessed with them now. And like that's so cool because it's such weird, cool music when you really think about it. And like for a child to hear the Talking Heads for the first time, and how fun it is, and how like he can love it as much as I do, like stuff
Hmm.
like that is really inspiring for me, because that's the whole point of what we're doing. And there's like, I'm constantly like listening to new music, and getting inspired by new people, and new styles. I like all different genres of music, and um, so that is inspiring as well. But really, like that, just remembering what music does for people is important.
So like, but from here and now on, like, how do you see your future, your own future? Do you have like any aims or anything for the future in your profession?
Sure. I mean, I always want to continue making music and making records. I'm also, I've been working for several years on a company that I'm starting, that, I'm starting to slowly talk more about as we can, that really aims to change the way people collaborate and create and connect with each other in the music industry, in a way that, a lot of what exists today, and the systems and the way things are done, were built for a completely different time, and we are in, the digital age. Music is like been democratized in a lot of ways. There isn't this huge barrier to entry that used to exist, where, I mean, tracing throughout history, like you had to either be a highly classically trained musician way back in the day, or have a ton of money to go in the recording studio. Um, now, now anyone can make music, and a lot of people talk about that as if it's a negative. And there's so much out there, and all the major record labels are eating each other up, and you can't make any money off of, I mean, streaming's, screwed everything up, and in terms of making any money. And that's all true, but what I don't think is true is that this is necessarily a bad thing. I just think we need to do things differently, and figure out new ways to collaborate and connect, and new ways to record, and get to studios and work together. So I'm building a company that is addressing that, and I'm really excited for that as well, because I want to, help other artists and music creators that, um, that are stuck in this old world versus the new world mindset, and really like try to help to push things forward, and also make like positive change. So, continue producing, of course, but that's something I'm really passionate as well in starting this company,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
So is the aim 2021 or is it like even further on?
2020, yeah, 2021,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
is the aim. Once
let's
the
start
goal
there.
is, once
Yeah.
once it's safe to enter the world again, we'll be ready to get things going,
Yeah,
once it's
launch
safe
it.
for everyone.
Yeah. That's perfect. Do you have any other things that you would like to add on to this? Like anything? You're free to speak.
I think you covered so much, you know. I just think I love that you all, you know, also promote like accessibility in music, and
Mm,
I just think it's so important for everyone to know that anyone can make music and nothing has to like stand in your way, whether it be where you live or who you are or how much money you have, you know, like that's not the world we're in anymore. And anyone that says it is, that you have to have this piece of gear and this amount of money and look this way, you know, it's like it's just not true. So I love that you all promote that, and like that's, you
mm,
know, something I really believe.
mm.
So
Yeah, and that's what you want to lift with your company as well as a
exactly,
highlight. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we're really glad that you wanted to join us for a little
Of
speak.
course.
We at EQLovesFestival and EQLoves Music want to thank you, Erin, for joining us for this meeting, and it has been really inspiring listening to you. And we will hope everyone will continue following your stuff on the internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and I hope to see you all in Sweden soon.
Yeah.
One day.
We hope
Thank you.
to be able to come there, or you come here. Let's arrange that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But take care. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.